Well, good morning. I want to tell you a story from this past week in my ESL class. There we are. I'll tell you a story from this past week in my ESL class. It's Thursday night, and I'm teaching class, doing the whole thing, helping people learn English, trying to make a difference, changing the world one awkward phrasal verb at a time. And this student, sweet guy, super polite, raises his hand like he's objecting or asking a question to the judge in a Law and Order episode. And he goes, "Excuse me, teacher." And he pauses and he says, "Is dumbass a nice word?" He had heard somebody at work call another person a dumbass. To put a little bit of context to this, first, we open the class each night with a "What new word have you heard today?" section. What new word have you heard since the last class? So if you've heard anything confusing, any word you don't know, bring it to class. We'll talk about it. We'll translate it. We'll talk about when you hear it in context. And tonight, the word they had heard at work was dumbass. And so there are moments in teaching where you feel like a real professional. You feel like you're guiding people through the mysteries of a complicated language. You're helping them understand idioms, grammar, and the wild chaos that is English spelling. And this was not one of those moments. My first reaction when I get questions like this, and particularly last Thursday night, was, "Oh no." And immediately followed by two thoughts. What am I going to say? And then, wow, what an excellent question. Now, a second for context note. I have heard this word, dumbass, my entire life. At times, I, myself, have been a dumbass. I was such an accomplished dumbass. I was invited to be a professor of dumbassery for a term at Hogwarts. I've also been called a dumbass, usually by family, colleagues, co-workers, friends, who saw me sort of try to plug a USB cable into a computer upside down at least 6 times. I've called other people dumbasses, lovingly, of course. Look at that dumbass trying to microwave a Pop-Tart in the cover, in the wrapper. So that's a little bit of context, my own history with dumbassery. But now, back to the story. I'm standing in front of the class, and this guy looks at me like I'm the Supreme Court of swear words. And he wants a ruling. And all I can think is, I have no idea on how to answer this question. And I'm thinking, well, dumbass is kind of like cilantro. It depends on who says it and whether or not you want it to ruin your taco. So I said, well, it's not a nice word per se, but it's also not the worst word. It's like it's bad, but it's also kind of affectionate. And sometimes, depending on the tone and the context, and maybe how southern the person is. Remember, we're in North Carolina. And the guy nodded like I'd said something profound, which I absolutely had not. Now the whole class is staring at me, waiting for a further clarification. So I tried again. And I said, okay, if someone calls you a dumbass in traffic, that's mean. But if your friend calls you a dumbass after you locked your keys in the car for the 3rd time this week, that's love. That's friendship. That's cultural intimacy, honestly speaking. I think I lost them at intimacy. So So the more I talked, the worse it got. I was digging myself into a hole. So then I said, it's kind of like a burn. You're kind of like a burn, but less formal. Like if your grandma says it, it's charming. But if your boss says it to you, it's a lawsuit. I think I lost them again when I said burn. Eventually, I gave up. And I said, probably don't use it until you've been in America at least 5 years, or until someone calls you a dumbass first. I think that's how you know you've made it. But honestly, it got me thinking, because here I am, a guy who has absolutely earned the title of dumbass multiple times in his life. I once married the wrong woman. I once drove 20 miles with a cup of coffee on top of my car and wondered why people were waving at me. I once bought a universal remote because I thought it was funny saying I wanted to change the channels on Uranus. And yet, I've also said it about other people with affection. So how do you explain a word like that? A word that's technically rude, but sometimes it can be tender. So anytime a student now is going to ask me if a word is bad, I think I've got this answer I'm going to say from here on out. Well, it depends. Here's what's going to be my answer. It depends on if your mom would say it. That's the new rule. If your mom would say it. If your mom calls you a dumbass, you're probably fine. If a stranger at Walmart calls you a dumbass, call the cops. And if you're still not sure, foolproof method. Just use buddy or chief. It's safer. You can say it when you're mad, when you're happy, when you're locking your keys in the car for the third time this week. Nice job, buddy. You really nailed it, Chief. Or you can say Hoss. I like that one too. Good job, Hoss. Well, that's English, you know? That's English. It is confusing, it is emotional, and it is a little bit judgmental. Confusing, emotional, and a little bit judgmental. Kind of like your grandma. You all have a great day. See you in class Tuesday night.